Guys, this is a small video. I've seen a lot of people wonder how to remove the intake manifold off of a B8 S5 4.2 liter. This one is the later version that has the vacuum actuated runners, which you can identify by looking at these. These are the actuators. And the reason why I'm doing this in the first place is because I think I have a faulty actuator solenoid, which is that right there. It's right here. This tried to remove it without taking the intake off, but I figure what the heck. I don't know if y'all remember or not. I posted some pictures of a collapsed vacuum hose, which was this one right here, that newer looking one. That's a new replacement hose, but I think because it was collapsed, it may have caused that solenoid to go bad. So I figure what the heck, I'll just utilize this as a training video to show how to remove this for people who want to do a carbon cleaning. So more to follow. This is the first kind of video I've done of this type, so I don't know if y'all remember, I did one for the valve body removal, same vehicle. It was a little bit more intense, though. This isn't too bad. But anyway, let's get to it. The first thing we have to remove is the intake hose right here. And after that, we got to take off the throttle body. One thing that you should do, this car is sat all night, and the reason why you prefer to do it that way is because it dissipates the pressure in the fuel lines, because we're going to have to remove these fuel lines, not necessarily a high pressure fuel pump, but the fuel lines themselves right here. And if you do this right after you've been running the vehicle, there's going to be more pressure in there. So I highly suggest you do this after the car has sat all night. So anyway, let's get to it. Okay, so we got this removed. One of the things to remember, you got a vacuum line back here and another one right here. Just wiggle it out. This will compress just a little bit to allow you to pull it loose and feed it through. Don't forget to put those vacuum lines back in, because I know by experience, if you do, you're going to get some codes. Another thing, you can go ahead and unplug this, and because it's going to have to come off, the whole device will, along with, right now you should probably get a rag and tuck it under here, because you're going to have to take this line off and these two lines off. So, and you're going to want a rag under here because you're going to want to catch the fuel that comes out. And you can go ahead and take this off too. And it connects right here. One of the things that I am not going to do, that it does recommend you do, is take off this piece. I don't know if y'all can see that with your light. That piece. That piece right there, it's only held on by 2 screws. You got one right there and one on the bottom side. That is a pain in the ass. So I am able to do it without breaking it, hopefully again. And because if you break that one part, it's over $100. So anyway, that's okay. So show you what I've done so far. This is I went ahead and unplugged right here. You got to unplug that because this is going to have to come off. This is a 14 millimeter and a 17 millimeter, 14 millimeter and a 17 millimeter, and this is a 17 millimeter also. Now this, I suggest you, what I do is I take a pair of channel locks or something and hold right here while I take a 17 millimeter, and this has to unscrew going towards the firewall. you don't want to not support right here, otherwise you risk breaking this. So that's what we're doing so far. And if you see, a little bit of gas came out, not a whole lot. So okay, we're getting the throttle body out now. These are T30 Torx screws. There's 4 of them. Look like that. There's 4 of them. The 3 on this side, that one, there's one there, and there's one down there. Those are fairly easy. The problem child, if there is one, is the one back here in this back corner. And little tip, if you have a T30 bit, which is like that, it will fit in a 1/4 inch socket. And if you're afraid of losing the bit into Never Never Land whenever you go to put it on there, 1 layer of electrical tape wrapped around the see if I can zoom in on this, wrapped around the bit, and it'll wedge it into the 1/4 inch socket. That way you won't lose it. Okay, got it off. And the next thing to focus on is those right there. I don't know if you can see them though. Hose clamps, there's one there, and there's one kind of vertical going behind it. Let me see if I can focus in on, hang on. You see the one behind, you got the one on top right there going horizontal. There's one right below that to the back. Those have to come off. Now this one, the one going horizontal, when you pull that hose off, there's going to be a little bit of coolant in there, so don't freak out. It shouldn't all come pouring out, but as long as you keep it somewhat elevated, you won't lose a whole lot of coolant whenever you pull that off. What we did here, this goes right here, okay? And you can either disconnect it from here or from here. Mine was just easier to come off right here. Once you get that out of the way, you need to take this whole hose. This just slides off of here. Take this whole hose and just move it out the way. Just tuck it up there. Next thing you're going to want to do is disconnect this right here. This will come loose right there. This may have a, if you've never had it off before, it may have a clamp like this on there. You just snip it, make sure you have some replacements of these, and you're going to disconnect that, because this hose right here will come out with the whole intake. Whenever you go to pull this off, the whole thing, that will come off with it. You'll see what I'm talking about whenever you go to remove it, because you'll see it all move. The tricky part when you go to remove this is getting this part over this, which isn't that bad really, but you just gotta take your time and try not to break anything, because that part right there is over $100. And the next thing to come off is going to be the rails, the fuel rails right here. So one thing you're going to want to take off is this clamp right here. There's a screw that goes right here. It's this one. It's a T30 right there. Goes inside here just like that. Pull that off, and I'll show you how this goes together. You want to be careful not to lose anything. This is the bottom side, and it's got a piece of rubber inside here to keep these snug. When you pull this off, this comes off like that. And now you see why I had to do that, is because see how this is able to move now. If you don't do that, you're not going to be able to get that off. Anyway, and the next thing is going to be those two T30s, that T30, and this whole piece right here will come off. Okay, the one special piece of equipment you might need, I don't guess you necessarily have to, but you're going to want to triple square, 10mm. The only thing that I've had to remove in order to give me enough room to maneuver that around the oil filter housing, you're going to have to remove this, and that is held in by a 10mm triple square. You can barely see it down there. I already loosened it up, but yeah, that you need to get this out of the way, and also unplug your high pressure fuel pumps, because you're going to want those out of the way too whenever you go to lift this whole thing up. Once you get that out, this engine anchor, you want to, that's when you start loosening all of these T30 torques. Okay, all of the torques are out, the T30 torques. Another thing you're going to want to do, this is actually what I'm replacing, but you want to unplug this. This plugs in right here. It sits just like that. Okay, well, if you take, it's kind of hard to get your finger in there to push that. If you take something like this and you reach down on the bottom side, you can shove this up in there and just kind of twist it that way while you're pulling on this at the same time, and it'll slide right out just like that. That way you don't break it or anything. Now, another thing that would behoove you to get are these things, long hemostats. And the reason why is because the only hose that's going to give you a problem, and it's one that's liable to break if you've never changed it, is that one right there. And if you look, you can see it's got a 90 on it right up underneath this, and that is what you want to use the hemostats for. You reach down under there, grab it, and just kind of push down while wiggling it back and forth. Eventually it'll slide right off. It is under suction, so it might take a little bit, but you reach under there, you grab it, and you lock these down and gently wiggle back and forth while pushing down, and eventually it'll, and you'll hear it. It's got a suction under it for vacuum. But, and the other one you want to get off, there's another one, is on the outside, that 90 right there with the white tube on it. That needs to come off too. Once you get that off, this whole thing will come up. Okay, here's the underside of my intake. If you're ever going to change out one of these, this is the old one. I already put the new one on. I just figured I'd show y'all how to do it. It's pretty self-explanatory. It does fit in there pretty snug. It's this right here. If you look right here, you got two tabs on both sides. It's kind of hard to, you can push it in, but this fits in there very, very snug. So it's, I took a screwdriver and went in the back side right here in this gap and just kind of wiggled it as I pushed these, and eventually it slid over and I was able to jockey it off. It appears to be working right now, but I think it's an intermittent issue with it. I tested it, it does close. I ohmed both of them out, and they do ohm different. So this one I think was 0.16 ohms, the new one, and this one was 0.24 ohms. So it's probably because it's new. Anyway, one of the things I noticed, and if y'all ever remove your intake manifold, pay attention to this. If you look really closely, if you look right here, you see that imperfection. There's another one right here. I think there's one over here too, just a slight one. What that usually means is it wasn't seated properly the last time it was put on. That very well could have been a leak as well, a vacuum leak. Never know, but it's good because if you look at this side, it's really clean, really flat. These are reusable, by the way. You don't have to change them. To prevent this from happening again, what I did on the actual lower intake, I took a little bit of grease, just a very thin film of grease, and I put it around each one, just a really thin layer. That way when you rest this back on there, it'll slide. But anyway, you can see it right there. That way it'll slide and won't bind like it did last. Okay, I was going to record me putting it back on, but it's kind of hard to do and hold the camera at the same time. But one thing to remember when you're putting the, I took the T30 Torx, all of them that hold this down, I put them all together, with the exception of this one, which holds the fuel rail, and probably not see it, I can't tell, but there's one right back here. That one is longer than all the rest of them, so keep that one separate. And I would make that one the last one that you put in. Don't torque anything yet, because I just got them hand tight, and even hand tighten them, you want to go from the outside cross corner all the way out, if you understand what I'm talking about. So you'll go side to side in the center, then go this way, this way, this way, this way, until you've tightened all of them hand tight. And when you torque them, you want to torque them the same way. I'm trying to think, before I torque them, I'm going to get those torque specs so y'all know exactly what it is, because this is plastic, so you don't want to over torque it, otherwise you risk cracking it. With the exception of these on top, these two, they really just need to be hand tight. They don't hold anything down except this bracket, along with this, and that one back there, the dark one, this one. But anyway, it's 9 Newton meters. If you translate that, it's like 79 inch-pounds. So yeah, and another thing, with your torque wrench, technically you're not supposed to use an extension with your torque wrench. Good luck finding one that you can fit in here without having an extension. If you do use an extension, keep in mind you want to keep that extension exactly perpendicular to your bolt, and you want to keep a firm hold on it for when you're torquing, because if that extension is not plumb with your bolt, it could throw off the torque value. So just keep in mind, try to keep it as stationary as possible and as straight up and down vertical as possible. Okay, while you got this loose right here, go ahead and connect this one, this fuel line, before you put this on, obviously, because once you tighten that, it's going to be difficult to line this up, and you do not want to cross thread these. So get them started with your hand before you go using any wrenches on either side. Okay, just a word of warning. They're easy to cross thread if you're not careful. Okay, once you get the fuel rails tightened back, now's a good time to put on your throttle body. Before you do that, make sure there's 2 hoses underneath this. Remember, they need to be reconnected and tightened. One of them has the horizontal hose clamp, the other one has the vertical hose clamp. Make sure you get those tight and snug before you put this on, otherwise you won't be able to get to them. Throttle body is in. Don't forget to reconnect this hose after you get this in, and also do not forget to plug your throttle body back in. Otherwise, guess what? No worky. These, they probably have a torque spec. I don't get too jiggy with it because it is going into plastic, and you do not want to strip those. So after that, we are going to bring this back over. Well, you know what? Now that we got this, everything's connected, we can actually put, now's a good time to put this hose back on, because it is going underneath that hose. So go ahead and put your intake hose back on. Just make doubly sure everything is snug, all of your hose clamps are tight, and all that neat jazz. Okay, I'm gonna try and show y'all. This is the last thing, by the way. I got all of this connected. Remember to support this while you tighten this, otherwise you could snap that. Don't want to do that. Make sure all your plugs are back in, all of your hose clamps are back in. Plug this back in. I believe that's your evap purge valve. And next thing, I was going to show y'all how I do this. If I can do it with one hand, could be interesting, huh? It'd be great if I screw up and then y'all would be laughing, huh? Well, let me see if I can get here to where I can, well, it's going to be difficult to do one-handed. Hang on one second, see if I can get it started. Okay, it definitely is easier to do with both hands, but give you an idea. It's right there. You just grab like that, click it into place like so, and as you're wiggling, it's on the nipple right now, as you're wiggling it, you pull up and you'll feel it seat all the way, and that's how you do it. The only thing left is to plug this back in, just like that. All right.